Good afternoon. Welcome to another special edition of the Select Board. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We are here to discuss, again, trying to find a replacement for our retired Fire Chief, Tim Herron. So let's start with Charlie to give us some information.
So just to backtrack, obviously, we knew that Tim was leaving. We worked with Jack Harrow, Harrow Associates, during a recruitment process, doing advertising, sending notices to the websites where we would think likely candidates would look. We ended up with about 20 candidates who applied for the job. Jack worked with Rebecca and myself to narrow the list down to a smaller group that would be sent to the assessment center, where we do training exercises to see the abilities, knowledge base, how they can act in different situations. There were 6 people that were invited for the assessment center. One of those dropped out, so we didn't want to replace it based on our knowledge of the candidates, so we went with 5 people for the assessment center. That was held several weeks ago here at Town Hall. After the assessment team finished its scoring and such, the recommendation from the firm was that we interview 4 of the 5 candidates. While it was a small difference in scores between the first 4 and the 5th candidate, the first four were very tight group around a certain scoring point. The other was a little bit behind. The board interviewed all 4 of the candidates 2 Mondays ago, and met again on Friday last week to make a selection to offer the position. And that candidate on Monday morning this week declined the town's offer, basically withdrew his application. So we're at this point where we have a few different options, which I wanted to present to the board. The first is reviewing the resume of the 5th candidate, reviewing the scoring for the 5th candidate. I feel that it would be justified if the board wanted to interview that 5th candidate. I'm not saying, and the board may differ on that and may want to move on to the other options, but that doing so would still preserve the board's ability not to appoint that person if it's not a good fit, and still consider the other candidates that the board interviewed a few weeks ago. That would be the first one. I'm not announcing that person's name because we didn't announce the names of the people who were being interviewed until they said, yes, we want to be interviewed. So we would have to go back to that candidate to find out whether they would still be interested in the position. If the board does not want to do that, then the board could also consider the 3 remaining candidates that it interviewed a couple weeks ago, and make a selection out of those 3. If the board did not reach a consensus, or the consensus was we're not interested at this time in any of those 3 candidates, the board could then wait a certain amount of time. Chief Nord is going to really be only available for a couple of months in terms of talking to him. He has other commitments. And obviously we were hoping to have a candidate appointed fairly soon so that there would be some crossover, because we need someone to work with the chief and with Craig for a number of weeks to gain experience about the department, its operations, what the current issues that we're having. Issues are not, there are issues and there are issues. There are issues where there are certain things going on that the new chief is going to have to deal with, but also in terms of how to move the department forward, in terms of whether we're talking about personnel, training, equipment, and so forth, how we can work on that and what's available and what the institutional knowledge, both in fire departments overall and this fire department in particular, we can provide to that person. If we wait, obviously there's a couple of possibilities. One, the board could reopen the search. We could redo it with or without an assessment center. There's a possibility that we would receive applicants who had not sent in a resume or application the first time, and that the board, and I would obviously talk with Jack, we might have to pay an additional fee to do so, but I think it would be justified to review, to help, it would help to have his expertise in this, and see if there were qualified candidates that come in that the board could interview again. I think those pretty much lay out the possibilities. The last one really is if we want to wait longer, some towns, just like you have interim town administrators, you can have an interim fire chief, not just for a few weeks as we're having for Chief Nord, but for a longer period of time. Have someone come in with a very good skill set like Chief Nord has, but could be doing that for a longer period of time. And during that interval, at some point, start the process again. One of the challenges with that is the deputy chief is going to be leaving by the end of the year, and between vacations and interims and everything else, I think it would be better to have whoever is coming in on a permanent basis be here earlier rather than later in the year. And so if the board felt it was time to redo the search, I would recommend strongly that it redo it earlier rather than later, not wait an excessive amount of time.
Peter?
Well, that was a lot.
Yes.
That was a lot.
Jack, could you?
Yeah, Jack, you want to come on up? So, for me personally, I thought that the candidate that I liked the candidates you had put in front of us for sure. The four that we met, but the gentleman that we selected to me stood far beyond the other three candidates, just based on the overall picture. Not just on skills of where he's been and what he's done, but management, clerical. I mean everything. He had all the boxes checked, everything that I had in there. So it's sucks. I guess I don't really have a better word to say than that we don't have
really good.
that opportunity.
That's a good word for this.
Yeah. So, I guess my question to you, Jack, would be, I know this one candidate was, right behind the other four, or six, whatever it was, the number was. You had 20. The other ones, like, way off the map. Did you have any other ones in mind that you'd say, well, we could probably move this, these 3, 4, whatever.
We really didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we had six good candidates. One withdrew
Yep.
when we mentioned the money to him. And then we had those 5 that moved forward.
Okay. Yep. And the one that we've got in front of us now just was right on the cuff of being able to be pushed forward by you guys, because I'm assuming this guy didn't come.
Well, they had the assessment, so he participated in the assessment center.
Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So,
He was
and
the
the
top
school,
6. He was in the top 6.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, these are the numbers?
Yeah.
All right.
So that the 5th candidate,
One thing kicked
Okay, yeah.
there was, how do I put it? The reason I think we didn't have the 5th candidate brought to the board was that while the scoring, the 4 candidates that the board did interview were very, very, I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
a score of 0 to 100.
Yep.
They were within a point or so of each other.
Yep.
The 5th candidate, while not, 20 or 30 points, was a few points away enough to say, okay, let's start with those 4.
Yeah.
I think the 5th, as I said, I think interviewing the 5th candidate, given the other, the timing issues, the need to
Sure.
make some choices, I think it would be worthwhile that the board have an interview with the 5th person. It may turn out that it's not a good match, and the board says, okay, we need to move on to our other options.
Yep.
But this way, you're preserving those other options, but at the same time, at least considering this person.
Yeah, I mean,
And I don't know if Jack may feel differently, or.
yeah, what do you, that was my next question, like.
No, I mean, I've talked to this candidate. He did call me after he, had heard, things were going on already. He said, well, just, let me know. I'd just like to know what I can improve on and what have you. And I've seen him in the other community. We do their work too.
Yep.
And he's a very bright young man. I mean, he's 13 years on the job. He's a captain. I mean, like the town administrator said, he did do well. I mean, he was just off the top. We were only going to bring 3 forward, but they were so tight. So, I mean, and he does live right in the next town over. So I mean, you know, that's an option. You know, and the other problem, I was talking to the chairman when he first walked in, is, you know, when you have somebody like the candidate that dropped out,
Yeah.
you know, he checks all the boxes.
Right.
And, you know, not typically, you don't have somebody that checks all the boxes like that. So it can make, you know, the other candidates not look quite as, you know, quite as good, because this person, you know, is in a different stratosphere.
Right.
So, I mean, so that's something you need to, you know, run through your head. I mean, I can't make a decision, but run through your head.
This couldn't be the first time you've seen something they put somebody forward and the gentleman decides to, or a lady decides to withdraw after they've been chosen. Have you had other situations like
It
this?
does happen, yeah.
Okay, and what typically have you seen the board do in that case?
Well, they'll either go to the number 2 candidate.
Okay,
They re-advertise and, you know, and look at it differently. It all depends on the, you know, the situation that you have at hand.
sure.
Or they re-interview, you know, if, you know, that your number 2 person
Yep.
that came before you, maybe you re-interview him on a different, more of a personal level, as opposed to, you know, the structured interview, and get a better feel for that candidate. You know, you already know how he looks in the structural interview, but if you interview him more on a personal basis, you know, there may be more of a connection.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
You're
you're
up.
looking at me. Of the other 3 candidates that we did not choose, I don't think we probably agree on a second choice, and I'm just spitballing that. I
Yeah.
don't know that, but just based on how I know each of us, what I know about each of us, I have a feeling we don't have a clear choice. Because I think if we did, that might have come up when we talked about it in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, when we voted to offer the job to Chuck Allen.
I think Jack's right on this candidate is,
Yeah,
okay, is over and above.
Right.
And I don't think we had a second, but the candidate that we did not interview, he was a little bit off on the scoring, but that was in one.
Just in one
He
area.
scored higher in
Yeah,
some
Yeah,
other
he was pretty
areas.
steady and strong. In the others, he was good in the in-basket. The in-basket, I really put a lot of weight in,
Yeah,
because that's your day-to-day issues that come up, you know, a truck gets in an accident, or
Yeah.
somebody's misbehaving,
Prioritizing
or,
what
you know, you get a complaint from a citizen. So it's handling the day-to-day, so, I mean, he did, you know, he did well in there. He was in, if you're in the 80s, you're doing well.
right.
I think we
His
should bring him.
employee issue was good, and the media was good, and I don't know what happened in the community.
Maybe he was tired.
Yeah, he just dropped off.
Right.
It, you know, sometimes.
Was
you
it
just-
after lunch? I mean, you know,
they
we all
just
get a
don't.
little.
You know,
Maybe he lives in a shitty community.
Yeah. No, so, so he's a nice enough kid. I actually talked to his
Get a
chief this
FCC
morning,
violation.
and the chief said he's
Well, it's all going over cable,
smart,
that doesn't.
smart gentleman, he's very teachable, very receptive. So his chief had high praises for him.
All right.
I think if he's willing to be made public, which he'd have to be,
Right.
Yeah.
If I called him,
I'd
he
be in
said
favor
yes.
of.
Yeah, I think it would be worthwhile to bring him in.
Okay.
Yeah, at least
The
to start
same-
that
the
post, to
same-
start
the
there.
same process.
Yeah.
If we can get that done quick, then we'll know where to go for whatever our second option's gonna be.
Yeah.
That works. I mean, like I said, I've spoken to him, and he called me just off the cuff to, you know, how can I improve myself?
See if there were-
Okay.
Which shows great initiative.
Yes.
I like hearing that, you
Yep.
know.
If the board wanted to do so, I think talking to Rebecca's idea would be that we do it on Monday. We've already got a meeting scheduled, but we could do it just as we did the interviews early a couple weeks ago. If we have for a 6 o'clock start, I think.
We have
We have a
five.
5.
We have a 5 o'clock because.
We do?
We have executive at 5
Okay.
to go over the personnel.
Oh, right.
Yes,
policies.
right.
We
The
can put
board
him on the
could do-
agenda, though, couldn't we, for 6?
No, well,
Oh,
that's,
it's already-
well, we could do the interview before the.
Before the 5?
We have an executive session at 5 o'clock on personnel policies and
Yep.
such. And that's tied into negotiations with the unions and everything else. But we could do it at 4, 4:15, something like that, we could do the interview with him, then our regular session is 6.
I would think we could do it at.
Yeah,
4
executive's gonna flow right into open,
Okay, yeah.
so whenever they
Right.
decide
I
that.
think we could do it at 4:30. We're only talking one candidate here. We only gave the others 15
It's just a
minutes.
half hour, at the most.
Right.
I could do 4:30.
Okay,
Peter,
Yeah, I'm good.
so, we'll call
see if you can do it on
and
4:30.
try and get an answer this afternoon.
The only thing is if you interviewed them and you wanted to go into executive session and decide which
Well,
one of
they
the
could- they
three
could-
options you were gonna pick.
Well, they can't go into executive
Oh,
session
can't.
for that reason.
Yeah, we can't discuss it in executive.
Yeah, that sounds good, works for me.
But we
See
can
if
put it as
can
an
do
action
that.
item, you can pass it over, you can
Right.
vote, whatever, yeah.
I mean, or schedule another meeting later
Yeah.
next
Right.
week, just as we did for, this last week.
Okay. Make a motion?
I make a motion that we try and schedule an interview with our other candidate, who shall be named at a later date.
To be announced. Second.
Any further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, folks. That wraps up another session. We'll do this again on Monday.
Please tune in next time for
Yeah.
Son of Fire Chief. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.